Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to Barry's Book Reviews. This is episode number 16. Today I'm reviewing a work of non-fiction by Nicole Chung called All You Can Ever Know. This is an adoption memoir, and there's a genre or subgenre of books that are adoption memoirs, and specifically Korean adoption memoirs, adoption books. So for example, there's another memoir called When You Were Born in Korea. There's a fictional story called The Lucky Gourd Shop by Joanna Catherine Scott, and there's The Coffee Can Kid by Jan Chek, which is a book for children. And Nicole Chung's memoir is her first book, and it was one of the most highly praised debut books and non-fiction books of 2018 when it was originally published. Chung was also one of several high-profile debuts from Asian American writers in 2018. Some of the other names that you might recognize now from that year are Vanessa Hua, Crystal Hannah Kim, and Lillian Lee. And All You Can Ever Know was named Best Book of the Year by many notable organizations, including the Washington Post, NPR, Time, the Boston Globe, and various other places, the Chicago Public Library, and so on. So very highly acclaimed when it was published. And it's a memoir about Chung's experience of growing up Korean in a white family in a primarily white neighborhood, with next to no connection or information about her cultural or familial roots. So this is a heartfelt and moving memoir about adoption. And you know, it starts by telling us about the circumstances by which she came to be adopted. Chung was born in Seattle in 1981 to Korean parents. She was born extremely prematurely. Her parents put her up for adoption after she'd been on life support for several months. Her adoptive parents were white and Catholic and lived in a small town in Oregon. And she grew up there. She attended school. She prepares for college there. And essentially has all of these formative experiences of youth in this small, primarily white town in her Catholic family. And she describes her growing awareness of this difference between her and her adoptive parents, her classmates, and just most of the people around her in her community. And she very movingly and insightfully and intelligently writes about her interior experience and how she would construct narratives to explain her adoption, like these stories to help her rationalize or understand how she came to be in this situation. And that's the first element of the book, where she talks about growing up in a community where she increasingly became aware, is made to be aware of this outsider status and the everyday casual racism that she experiences living in that community. So that's one element of her story. But she isn't just writing about her own experience as an adoptee. She also contrasts her upbringing and experiences with the upbringing of a sister that she didn't even know existed until she was well into adulthood. And her sister's experiences were very different for various reasons. So woven throughout the book are sections that talk about her birth sister. She doesn't meet this sister until she's an adult. She learns that her birth parents already had two daughters when she was born, so she has two older sisters. And the parents told these two older sisters that Nicole had died during childbirth. So they grew up completely unaware of her existence. And for various reasons, the sisters' lives were very difficult. In particular, one of the sisters, called Cindy, and they had quite challenging lives for various reasons and difficult relationships at times with the parents. And so part of the book examines this contrast, right, between her imagined version of her birth parents, who they might be, and then the sort of difficult and at times painful reality that she learns from her sister, from her older her sisters, especially Cindy. And then another part of the book, another significant element in the book, details her attempts to reconnect with her birth culture as an adult. And she has various things to say about this experience. So as an adult, she leaves home and goes to university and graduates and gets married and is just progressing with her life. She decides to start to search for her birth family. And, she explains in sort of detail and, very, compelling and engaging way the sort of the churn of emotions, the conflicted emotions that she had around this search. But she does discover that her parents are still alive, they're still living in America, her birth parents, and that she has these two adult sisters. And she contacts them and connects with them in different ways and learns more about her heritage and her family tree and so on. And she writes about these, huge life-changing revelations, like what it's like meeting sisters that she didn't know existed and learning what their life was like. It's very moving, the way she talks about these experiences. And she's trying to find answers. She talks about the search for answers. She wants to answer this question, like why was she put up for adoption? And she also talks about trying to connect with Korean culture as an adult and how at times she was too intimidated. She felt like she couldn't claim her Korean background, that she at one point says she was too intimidated to take Korean classes when she was at school. And then the other important element of the book is that it's also a memoir about the birth of her first child, and how she talks about how her impending motherhood had a significant impact and affected the way that she thought about her heritage and her birth family. And so these things coincided. She was making first contact with her birth family around the time that she was trying to get pregnant and was pregnant. And so she's going through these huge life experiences while she's pregnant at the same time for much of it. So of course this shifts her perspective on adoption, being pregnant and having a baby. It changes how she thinks about adoption. She reflects on these different relationships that she's had with her adoptive mother, with her birth mother, and then subsequently with her own daughter. And she reflects on the questions that she asked her adoptive mother as a child and how she now answers her own daughter's questions. And one of the reasons she writes that she ended up searching for her birth family was because she was having a child. This was a sort of primary motivating factor, and she wanted to have something more to tell her child, tell her daughter about her own history and about her heritage. And she writes that, and I'll quote a little section here, "I thought the answers I had weren't necessarily good enough for either of us until I found out I was pregnant and was looking squarely at motherhood for the time as a reality, not as a hypothetical. I hadn't really had cause to consider the adoption for anyone in my family beyond me. I could see its effects on my parents and obviously on me, and I could think about what it had done or what it had felt like in my adopted family. But until there was another generation to consider, until I was pregnant myself and expecting a child, I couldn't really think about in concrete terms what it would mean for my kids to be the children of an adoptee and what sort of questions they might have as a result, or what kind of disconnect they might feel from their history or heritage as a result." And there's lots of reflections like this, and like I said, she writes very intelligently and engagingly about these different experiences. Overall, I thought this was a very insightful and often very moving book about family and relationships and race, and I highly recommend it. Today's book was by Nicole Chung, and it's a memoir called All You Can Ever Know.